to start implementing community-based centers, counselors, social workers, etc. But to do that, we need to change the culture of how Guyanese look at mental health, and they look at the stigma of having a condition or being depressed and admitting to themselves they have a problem and they need help. And I think that's definitely changing the way we look at our problems, whether it be mental health, suicide, alcoholism. We need to look at it more seriously and be honest with ourselves. We're humans. This is going to happen. And I think a lot of times we just kind of ignore it or push it off as even like possession, like those kinds of things. Not that I'm not for like praying and religious groups doing what they have to do for persons who are suffering, but you need to know when you need to move on from there and, you know, check with, you know, the psychiatrist here and see if there's something else that could be occurring, and maybe not just a religious or possession of some sort, which is what you see.
More than that.
Which is what you see in Guyana. People wait a really long time before they seek medical help for a mental health condition because they believe it's like possession or something. And so these are just small cultural things that we have to try and start moving away from and seeing it more from an educational standpoint.
You made an interesting point earlier. We were talking here about, you asked a question, why would a 14-year-old girl want to have a relationship with a 21-year-old man? And we are seeing some of these issues. In fact, some of them, I remember one not too long ago as well, where the young lady committed suicide, and this was on the Essequibo, which is the region seems to be taking the lead on suicide right now. And so when I think it was the caregiver, I think the aunt, had a conversation with the young lady, and she said that there was this boy in school that she liked. When they spoke to the young man, he said they were just friends. So he was really baffled, you know, really confused about it. How is it, or how do we deal with our youths that are seemingly spending a lot of time on thinking about getting involved in a relationship when they are not really ready for it, when they have not really spent enough time on their upcoming career or whatever it is they want to do? How do we treat with it? And I'm talking to a youth, dealing with youths.
Well, I think definitely the approach is being able to, first of all, you have to have a home that's accepting and non-judgmental. Because if your child thinks that you're going to take away her phone or ban her from that school or ban her from the boy, which you see, they're not going to come out and tell you anything. So that's the first thing you have to look at, that you have to be already having an environment of, you know, acceptance and open communication. But I think a lot of times parents need to show that their children are loved, that they do not need validation from a young man or a young woman. And we see grown-ups 25, 30 years old still seeking validation from their partner. And when their partner doesn't do that, or they are, you know, they have an argument and, you know, they say, you know, partners will do what they do, which is they give you a low blow when they argue, and that hits home for you. And so instead of saying to yourself, oh, he was just upset and he just said that, and you move on for it, it hurts you deeper because you don't have the self-esteem to back up. You don't have the confidence to say, well, that's a bad relationship, I need to move away. It's a mixture of having confidence, having critical thinking, rational, and knowing how to move forward. Because if you're in an abusive relationship, you need to realize you need to move on and come out of that situation. So I think a lot of times it has to do with building up self-esteem within your own family unit and your own child, showing them what love looks like. Because I think a lot of children don't see what love really should look like, or a healthy marriage, or a happy home. So when they get into a relationship to seek that out, if it's not, you know, that positive, they're like, well, it's not very much different from my own home. So there's always that. So I mean, I think definitely a problem in Ghana. Now, I have been, as long as I can remember, I've only been reading about 3 things, really. As a child, I read about domestic violence, domestic-related issues with children and women and so on. I have been reading, this is about 15 odd years, you know, I've been reading about this. I've been reading about suicide for about 10 odd years. I find it so funny that, not funny, but I mean sad in the sense that Guyana is only now getting on board with suicide. I made a comment on, I'm on a page called Let's Discuss Suicide Solutions, and I said, you know, we're in the place that we are right now because we did not nip suicide in the bud when we had a chance, because it's been happening. We're just only now seeing more and more cases come up, and whether that's an effect of what people are saying, this trending, that suicide is trending. I'm always one for that suicide. People are committing suicide because of mental health or disturbances or trauma, sense of helplessness and so on. I do not want to accept that suicide is now trending, because that is a scary thought.
Okay. I want to get this from you before we go quickly too. Do you think the media, do you think, I know you're going to smile on this one, do you think the media is contributing? Because there's a conversation out there too that the media is contributing to the whole suicide escalation. And the I heard one person say, and of course I do try to gather comments and conversation with from as many people as possible, that they believe that the media should not be, this is one person saying, they don't believe the media should be sensationalizing in their term, or even giving credence to this whole issue of suicide. You should put it on the back burner a little bit. Whereas there's the other conversation that says we need to talk about it. And I think that person, and I tend to agree with the second person that said we need to talk about it, because I think it's because we were not talking about it in the past. That's where we are, where we are. But I want to get this from you.
Yeah, I completely agree. We are talking about, there's a myth. It's like talking about suicide breeds suicide. No, that's not accurate. Persons who are thinking about suicide, whether you're talking about it or not, they're already thinking about it. They don't need the idea to be planted in them if you're already in a state where you're already thinking about it or you're going to do it. There are people who are what we deem impulsive suicides. But there must have been something happening along the way to make you go there. But in terms of media, I think my response to the media is that talk about it, but we have to be sensitive. Like I was asking, who do I talk to get the media to listen in terms of how to report on suicide? Do your research. Go online and see how they report suicide. There was the case of the Tushan girl that happened last week. She's underage, which means you cannot mention her name. Now, the media, I don't know if I should call the names if I do remember, but they said, child that cannot be named, da-da-da-da. But then they listed her mother and her grandmother. And it's like, hello, if you live in a small community, you know that Patsy only got one girl child, and now this girl child, you can make sense of who it is. So it's like, what are you doing? Do you not understand that giving away a parent's name and the village and the age and these details will basically the whole point of protecting the child, right? So that's my concern with that. In terms of the media needs to, some people are saying, oh, they're basically giving away how to do suicide. What I found with the case of my friend Zenita, they said exactly how many carbon tablets she took. Now, why would you put in this media, she took exactly X amount of carbon tablets? Why are you doing that?
So they're irresponsible.
So yes, it's an irresponsible, like yes, people are saying they're, and that's why they're saying it's trending, because every day, last week, almost every day of the week, you open newspapers, you saw a suicide attempt. Yeah. And yes, it's good to talk about it, but what I actually like is last Friday, I pulled out every day, every week, I pull out my news clippings and I clip there and I read them and study them and so on. Last Friday, Guyana Times had 4 articles on suicide. The 2 cases, Central and the father of 2, as well as 2 educational pieces. And they have other persons like Adam Harris, Michael Young, who write educational pieces on mental health and suicide and a way forward. That is what I think the media should be doing. Both local media and social media should be putting out educational pieces, analytical pieces, not just saying, well, the girl died and this is how she died, and And we should also be going back to the families and saying, how have you dealt with the suicide since? What have you done? Have you had more suicides? What is the effect in the community? So instead of just pushing out the report there, we never hear anything about the family after all of that, after you've, put them down in the media and, further traumatize them. It's like we need to also be looking at the holistic aspects that go into suicide and mental health and so on.
Okay, Raiza. In wrapping up, I want to give you a chance to speak to, let's say we've got a young lady that's looking at us right now and she's contemplating suicide. What do you say to her?
Yeah, that's that's a good question. I would say to you, youth, older persons, where the case may be, think of it in the sense that your life and your circumstance may be difficult, but if you can find a way out of it, that is the way forward. I know it's difficult to think about it like that, but if there is someone you can speak to, a teacher, a pastor, where the case may be, a friend, move towards that light, because that is the way forward. There's going to always be traumas. There's always going to be difficulties in life. But if you can actually see that there's positive, find one positive thing, hold on to it, and move forward with that. Because we're all suffering. You're not alone. And that just stay alive. Because as much as you think that you're better off gone, you're not. Because there are people who will miss you.
I'm not done with you, Raiza. I've got you now speaking to parents who, though their children are troubled and might be contemplating suicide. So you've got parents
yes.
looking at you that have got this issue. They know that their daughter or son probably is contemplating suicide from pressures from the home. What do you say to those parents?
It's a perfect question. In the workshop, we talk about that as well. My advice to anyone, parents and youth, if you suspect that your child or your partner or your friend is contemplating suicide, take these 3 steps. A, you go to them and you say, Mark, I've been noticing that you're not going to school, you're not performing. Don't make it as a judgmental thing. Make it as a concern thing. Let your body reflect your concern and your genuineness of this. And so you say you've been missing work, you're not getting your notes together, you've been drinking, we can sense that, we can smell it on your breath, etc. So you give them physical and things that they're doing. And then you say, is there something happening? And you pause and you wait. I have a problem with this, the pausing. I don't like silence, but you pause and you wait for a response. If they say no, in most cases they'll say no, nothing. They might say yes, and you'll have a discussion. And then you say at the end, are you thinking of suicide? And it is a strange thing to ask, and it's even difficult for me as someone who's been practicing this for years, but having that question put out there, it's not going to make them now think of suicide. It's just that I'm checking in to make sure that you're not that far gone and that we need to now deal with whatever issues you're having now. So yeah, and so I would advise parents to have that discussion. Just simple things: who it is, what you're noticing. Pause, let them answer, and then ask them the follow-up question: are you thinking of suicide?
Raiza Khan, one of our upcoming leaders, she's a member of Global Shapers community, and they've been working. This is their new project, Mental Health, and they're working on suicide. I'm going to be tapping into Raiza again
Yes.
a little later on in the year to find out where they've gone, because they've got quite a lot of work to do. And I'm really happy that you spent some time with us.
I'm so happy
A lot
to
of
have
food
you.
for thought for me,
Yes.
and a lot of information and education for our friends that are joining us here in Close Up. Raiza, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. for having
And I
me.
wish you all the best. And that Guyana would be able to really nip this in the bud. It's a problem, and it's one that we've got to deal with. I'm Mark Watson. Until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.